What's up? What's doing? What's happening? How's life? What's doing? What's happening? What's cracking? What's popping? What's doing? So I want to just go over 1 Corinthians 15, verses 5 through 7, and that he appeared to Cephas and to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 brethren at one time, most of whom remain until now, but some have fallen asleep. So I'm gonna get back to that. Some have fallen asleep because fallen asleep is a really weighty term, which a lot of people haven't. They always think of being dead until this verse, and I think it means don't believe. So I'm gonna skip past that for now. Come back to that another time. With book, what do you call that? Bookmark or whatever. Put a tag on it or whatever tag. And then it says, then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles. So I want to highlight James right there. So it says he appeared to the 12, then 500, and then he appeared to James, the rest. So why I want to bring that up is because James, I'm going to be looking at James kind of side-eye for a little bit, and this kind of hit me like a ton of bricks kind of recently. So I just wanted to get back into Acts 15 to be more demonstrative about what I'm saying, because I believe Paul wrote First Corinthians. First Corinthians, that's definitely a Pauline work. If you don't believe Paul wrote First Corinthians, you don't believe Paul is even Paul. I mean, it's probably the most validated book other than maybe Romans or Galatians for the great Saint Paul. So it says, someone came down, this is 15, Acts 15. Someone came down from Judea and began teaching the brethren, unless you are circumcised according to the laws of Moses, you cannot be saved. And then Paul and Barnabas had great dissension. So here's Paul and Barnabas going against these Judaizers and whatnot. So you know, what am I trying to say with this is that it says what did they want to do is they say what did James say? What did James say? Okay, this is the next page, sorry. So okay, so this if you go to Acts 13 or sorry, this took so long. Acts 15, and you go to verse 13. After they had stopped speaking, James answered, saying, "Brethren, listen to me. Simeon has already related how God first concerned himself." So if you go on through here, he talks for a long time. He's like, go on. So he had, just like in Acts 21, he had kind of put the stomp down on Paul, and Paul doesn't like this. And the church is Pauline, because you could say it's apostolic, but James wasn't one of the apostles. It's not 13 thrones or 25 thrones. It's 12 or 24 that they wouldn't have James as an apostle. So if this is the apostolic decree, it's not necessarily the Pauline decree. Maybe they put Paul's name on it. I got to read more into this, but it's really concerning that a lot of what he's kind of describing the Gentiles do to be saved is very concerning because it's not Christianity. Christianity doesn't have the laws of Judaism, and although this isn't like a Mosaic law, this is a Noahide law. It's the Jews who push these Noahide laws, and they want Gentiles to go under the Noahide laws. So here's James, the last to see Jesus, even though he's so-called brother or whatever. Um, he going to say that they have to look at this right here. It says that you abstain from things sacrificed to idols and blood and all things, and from all things strangled. So it says all things strangled, and this is very similar to the Muslims. So Jews and Muslims and Christians of this kind of Protestant common belief are under the same belief of the Noahide laws, and Noah didn't say he's going to kill you if you didn't follow the Noahide laws, because they can see as Ecclesiastes and Job, and in the New Testament, the wicked get to live too. And I'm not saying be wicked or nothing like that, because I would never, never want to eat a living animal. So Noahide laws, you can't eat a living animal, and I would never want to eat a living animal. That's like, I mean, whoever even thought of that is crazy. Like, where it says sacrifice one of your children, this Yahweh said sacrifice one of your children or whatever, but you can redeem them. Like, he went in Jeremiah, never even what I thought, that never even came to my mind that you would sacrifice your children. You know what I mean? So, like, this kind of weird thing that they would even think that anybody would eat a living animal, I would never eat a living animal. That's cruel, even like the smallest, simplest animals can feel pain, so that's really unduly needed, really unnecessary. So it says things strangled, and you gotta eat blood. So you gotta understand that when this is what the Muslims do, when you cut an animal and drain the blood, there's no more blood in it, and when there's no more blood in it, there's no more life in it, and that's how you know there's no more life in it. So when you strangle something, you kind of hold the possibility, or if you eat something with blood, you hold the possibility. If you're more superstitious, you want to be sure, and you should let your meat cure for the and honestly, maybe you shouldn't even eat meat, but that's not the point. You should let it hang for a while and whatnot. So this is really Noahide laws that James is trying to teach him, which is Judaism. And in Judaism, a Gentile doesn't have to follow the law of Moses anyway. So if they just have to follow the Noahide laws and they don't have to follow the laws of Moses, then how is James suggesting anything other than Judaism? It's no different. There's nothing remarkable about that. Why would they even put that in the Bible if he's just suggesting Judaism? Like, it's really weird, and this is Muslims too. Like, if you read through Muslim legal code, it's just like Judaism. It's like uh, that has is all for the law, the letter of the law written. And they try to match everything, and they don't have the spirit of law to do common law, to look at cases and situations to understand how people interact. It's very authoritarian, this kind of letter of the law. Trying to live by the law. A righteous person does the law, it does follow the law, and a righteous person respects the law that's in place because they don't believe in anarchy. But that to go back to some ancient law because it was written doesn't make sense to me at all. Because times change and everything. So I see a lot of Judaism and a lot of Christianity too, is especially amongst the so-called Protestant Christians, that one thing is Revelation 12. They say, "Oh, this isn't going to be Mary, this woman of heaven, because it's the Jews, because she had the 12 stars." Even though Mary can represent the Jews, like, and the 12 stars, uh, because he was born of a woman and he did crush death. Genesis 3:15 at the place of the skull. So, like, when you have this. it's blasphemy because it's saying that the Jews are in heaven, kind of before time, and it doesn't really make any sense. It's what the Muslims would call shirk. That you're putting somebody on equal status of God. And like they might have done this. People like, let's say, when they're copying Isaiah 44 or Isaiah 45, and they really like Cyrus, and Cyrus paid them to write some translations or whatever, and they give them a little extra few points or whatever. You know what I mean? Um, but you can see Cyrus like throughout the whole Bible, and that's what I was kind of saying yesterday about Ezra. If he's here around Cyrus time, and then he's already old by Cyrus time, and then here he is at Artaxerxes time. That's 100 years right there, and it doesn't really add up that he could be, at two places different, at one place at two times or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so Artaxerxes like 400, and they say like Nehemiah, was 100 years later, but it doesn't really add up because Nehemiah is talking about the same reading of the law, and people say, oh, Ezra wrote the law, like what is he copying from? Like so. Because they said that they had burned the scrolls or whatever, and that's why they think Ezra's so smart, because he had figured it all out or whatever. But he skips over all these different leaders, and when you forget about when you don't know the names of the median leaders and you're just calling everybody Darius or Ahasuerus, then hopefully everybody knows who you're talking about when it's clearly different people and the same people, and it's very confusing like that. That the real one you gotta look at is Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes was 100 years later, and Ezra, if he's still around, then my point is that Artaxerxes, like it wasn't even eventful, the building of the wall as much, that couldn't be, because like I was saying, Jeremiah talks about the city coming back, so to say that they were just building the temple for 100 years and not the city, that has nothing to do with Jeremiah's prophecy. You know what I mean? And to take the uneventful thing from, where you skip all these leaders, you go from Cyrus to Artaxerxes, that's 100 years. You know what I mean? um, and then when you talk about at the beginning of that period, Haggai and Zerubbabel, and then you talk about the end of that period, Haggai and Zerubbabel, they're believed to leave over 100 years too. And just like how you'll say about Apostle John, you say he wrote Revelations in 95 AD, but John was already like 15. Like by the time he started following Jesus, like you want him to be pretty old too. For before medicines that and operations that make people live like quite a while. Um, so to make a long story short, something that kind of bothered me about this sort of Jewish Christian is also the last days, and it's also what Muslims believe. You don't believe in the resurrection. You believe everyone's laying in the earth until the last day, and this is because the Jews were very influential for the Muslims. But I gotta say something another time, but I gotta get on with something. Talk to you later.